Imagine that a movie that has been chosen to be the official submission to the Oscars representing India will not be shown in its complete and truest sense for Indians themselves. We really are living in the most odd times when it comes to censorship related to art in this country. This immediately reminds me of what Zoya Akhtar said regarding the kind of predicament we are in. That this is not only a reflection of the artists being censored, but it assumes that the audience does not have the intellectual capacity to decipher content the way it is presented. It assumes that all of us are dumb and do not have the mental bandwidth to analyze hard hitting themes. Homebound is not some random story about two friends. It's not just some random story about two people who sit for the Indian Police Service examinations and the caste and class discrimination they face while carrying out blue collar jobs. This is a true story based on the lives of Mohammad Sayyub and Amrit Kumar, two friends whose story gained global prominence due to an article titled Taking Amrit Home, written by Bashrat Peer for the New York Times. I would urge you not to read the article first and watch the film first, because essentially the article will be a spoiler. This is not some propaganda. This is a reflection of our society, and we want to look away because we refuse to believe that we as a country have problems. Dharma Productions has dealt with its own ordeal this year itself when it came to the censor board butchering the final edit of Dhadak 2. The film, before its release, underwent 16 cuts with the CBFC. It's such an interesting time, no? Where jokes with sexual innuendos and women becoming mere objects of desire as the punchlines can easily circumvent these laws, but hey, when it's a reflection of our society, that's where we draw the line. Homebound finds itself in a similar situation where the makers were instructed to make 11 changes in the final edit, where words like Gyan and the lines like Aloo Gobi Khate Hain have been removed. A sequence where the two leading characters get into a scuffle during a cricket match and the aftermath of discrimination faced by Chandan is fully removed. Something referenced in dialogues later on, but because it has been omitted from the final edit, you get slightly confused on what the characters are speaking about. Sources state that the revising committee was extremely harsh with the film, having led to quite a hostile environment when watching the movie. The producers and makers of the movie not protesting regarding several of the elements being debated because they have dealt with the same during the release of Dhadak 2. While the filmmaker Neeraj Ghaywan has somehow still saved this film from an editing point of view, the 2 hours and 2-minute running time still providing for a seamless experience, I needed to reference and tell you what has happened behind the scenes because this battle is often overlooked when people step into the theater to watch any film. You know what's the saddest part about this movie? That it needs to provide a disclaimer to the public that any resemblance to any character is purely coincidental and that the movie is fictional and purely meant for entertainment purposes. Followed by the clear sign that this movie is based on a true story. Contradictory statements immediately, but it tells you about how artistically one is handcuffed to toe the line, or else the movie will not get the luxury to be seen in theaters. The film focuses on Ishaan and Vishal playing the roles of Mohammad Shoaib Ali and Chandan Kumar, childhood friends who want to change the fate of their families, who are doing odd daily wage work to make ends meet. The two friends have aspirations to be in the police force and despite their circumstances, work hard to achieve their goal. The people they meet along the way, including Sudha Bharti played by Janhvi Kapoor, and how responsibilities often outweigh individual ambition with the unpredictable timing of the global pandemic forms the basic premise of Homebound, directed by Neeraj Ghaywan, which easily becomes one of my favorite films of the year for not only is it impactful, but for it represents everything that I associate with falling in love with Hindi cinema in the first place. The writing and direction by Neeraj Ghaywan immediately draws you in, for the wide-eyed aspiration of the two characters in the very first scene is met with the ground reality of people packed like sardines, waiting in line for the same dream you wondered you were destined for. We immediately are reminded as viewers of the privilege we take for granted. A platform number changes, chaos ensues, the lack of civic sense becomes apparent. This is the only way to escape their reality. One remains unbothered about others. Chandan exclaims, "Exam pe ja rahe hain ki jang mein?" Both the characters take a sigh of relief as they get some breathing space in a congested train, only to look in a despondent manner at the sheer suffocation in the bogie, with one human on top of the other, unbothered and engrossed in their books. You quickly realize that the law of the jungle works in this environment. survival of the fittest, and one having no time for empathy for those who don't have the courage or willingness to persevere. The performances of the supporting cast are absolutely spectacular, each family member having their own pain that they have internalized, for one needs to present a facade of strength and determination. Shalini Vats as Chandan's mother reminds him that the only thing that she has inherited is her feet. Aching and worn out from the years of work on the field, she possesses boundless love for her son, beautifully expressed with how she wants him to achieve everything he dreams of and more, and this often becomes a luxury for those from lesser privileged families, a chosen one who may change the fate of the family, oftentimes at the cost of someone else in the family. This sentiment of those who are left behind, weighed down by the responsibility of debt and daily expenses, is expressed beautifully by Harshika Parmar playing the role of Chandan's sister. The mother deals with the most ghastly, inhumane, divisive language being projected towards them, and the character stares at B.R. Ambedkar's portrait hanging in their house, wondering what led us to go so astray. Even Janhvi Kapoor, in her brief appearance as Sudha, someone that gravitates towards the simple nature of Chandan, has a charming presence. Her interactions with him have a tenderness and stern pragmatism that often becomes necessary for the circumstances in which both of them grow up. The 4:3 aspect ratio of this film beautifully highlights the emotional intimacy of the film, for you feel like a part of Shoaib and Chandan's lives. The film has a beautiful warm texture that allows us to have a personal relationship with the characters, and it also was triggering for me personally, as it takes us through a chapter that we all experienced in our lives just a few years ago in varying degrees during the pandemic. The film's tale becomes a sharp reminder of what we consider to be our misfortune, not realizing the luxury of a roof over our heads and loved ones around us. The film, through its writing, highlights the weight and pressure on individuals in a society where self-worth is dictated by not only the work that they do, but the surname that they inherit. It is a reminder of the daily problematic comments one makes on one's faith, identity, or caste, aloof to the impact such heartless comments have on individuals. It reminds me of the observations some people have made about a mob and how it acts, on how the disease spreads from one person to the other, where one garners more courage when a part of the pact, and how the conversations one was having after a few drinks seem to be normalized during a morning conversation over chai. Just as an example, how normalized bigotry is, that the poor performance of an individual in your favorite cricket team is immediately met with accusations of anti-national sentiments and a microscopic lens of one's faith, and how one is wired genetically. No wonder that the establishment and those in positions of power have a problem with this film, because it merely shows us a reflection of how we are wired, and no one wants to be reminded on how they may be flawed. We would much rather subject ourselves to distractions of violence on screen and crass humor, because it at least momentarily makes us forget about our problems. That relief, however, does not mean that the problems don't exist. Homebound is a very special film, for yes, it poetically captures the strains we have in us as individuals and as a society, but even more so because it, for me, artistically presented two young actors who are absolutely exceptional in this tale. This may be a story of their individual dreams, but it's a story of friendship that perseveres while dealing with the worst adversity. Both Ishaan Khatter and Vishal Jethwa made me emotional and so proud. Vishal looking up at the sky telling Ishaan that he dreams of making a cement wala pakka ghar immediately makes you want to root for Chandan's dreams. The adda at which they meet on a daily basis as the flowing river takes its own form has a serenity that both the characters often find solace in. Life goes by without you even realizing the hurdles one faces merely on the basis of what is their identity, the family in which they are born. These are people who do not have the luxury to ask for what is their right, but it has to be snatched away in instances for people to realize that they are worthy of the same opportunities and dignity. Beautifully showcased in a sequence in which Shoaib speaks to his superiors in the company in which he works as a peon. This is when Chandan describes the bori se lekar kursi tak ka safar. It is something that will consistently throw curveballs at you, but only the brave will remain to tell the tale. The ghut ke jeena, especially expressed by Khattar, and the abuse he faces will genuinely make you rage at the scenes and dialogues being performed on screen. It is in the concluding moments of the film where Ishaan and Vishal put forth a performance that left me in tears. It left me broken, for both the actors showcase such maturity and conviction, you can't help but be emotionally just torn apart on where they find themselves. A story many in this country dealt with in the most unpredictable and uncertain times of our lives in the 21st century. I would urge you to watch this film on the big screen, for it is not only achingly beautiful and heartbreaking, but for it is a movie that is fearless enough to tell us a story about the reality that a lot of people live in this country on a daily basis. You wonder why filmmakers keep on making the commercial slop rather than something compelling and thought-provoking about our society? It's because of the battles filmmakers like Neeraj Ghaywan have to deal with to tell the story of his own people in its raw and true state. Filmmakers would rather not deal with such an ordeal, and for the brilliant, poetic storytelling, the last frame being probably one of the most beautiful things I've seen in film lately, I would urge you, for the sake of art, to watch this film in the theatre. It's the only way films like this can be made in the future. It's not fantasy or fiction, this is reality.